Hello everyone, today I want to show you how to make this traditional Chinese woodworking marking gauge. And I get the idea for this marking gauge from a Chinese woodworking master. And I left a link in the description to his video. And compared to his marking gauge, I made two notable changes. One is that the cutters I made here only cut in the pull direction, whereas the cutters he made cuts in both the pull and the push direction. The other change I made is that I added a whole new part to the marking gauge, and I call this part the offset plate. And the offset plate is going to make the laying out of angled mortise and tenons ridiculously easy. So hopefully we'll get to this next week. Today I want to focus on the marking gauge here, and this marking gauge is tool number 7 of 7 of the traditional Chinese woodworking tools that I wanted to make for you and for myself. And hopefully after today, we'll be using these tools to make lots and lots of projects. To make this project, all you need is a block of wood, some Allen keys, and a couple of thumb screws. Before I settled on the final design, I actually made about 8 different prototypes. Here are just a few samples of the prototypes, as well as a couple of hex keys that didn't quite work out. I made the cutters from 1/4-inch hex keys, and I shaped it so that the tip is slightly off-center, and this helps it to work better in the pull direction than it does in the push direction. I then rounded over the back of the hex keys to make it easier to insert into the wood block. I made the body of the marking gauge from a piece of beech wood. From that one piece of beech wood, I cut out 2 body blanks. And I'm using double-sided tape so that I can tape them together, and I'm aligning them on my plane so I can lay them out both at the same time. This also makes the bays wider, and that's going to make drilling them a lot easier. So, due to the shape of the tip here, it's very important to be able to have clearance for each one of these scribers. So this one scribes here. The next one has to be clear enough to scribe this line without interfering with this one or this one. So each one needs to be able to have its own space. So each one is at a specific angle. So to mark the angle that I want for this, I made this little template. It slips in like this, and it allows me to align it with the sharpest, with the pointing in the right direction that I want. So I think this is looks about right. And now I have the 4 angles I want to use. Now if your blade is a little bit different, you're going to have to find your own angle. So ideally I suggest making a prototype first rather than using your good piece of wood. I made this these first set of lines at a very awkward angle for the camera. And then when I looked at it again, it's like these look a little off, so I went ahead and remade it at a better angle so I can see it more clearly. And these red lines are the lines I'm going to follow. So I'm going to take my bevel gauge here and just put it up against the side here. And so this is for number 1. And then I want to take this piece here and take my bevel gauge, put it right up against this. And draw probably a couple lines here. So next I'm going to set the first one in. So I've got this. I'm just going to eyeball it from the top. I'm going to take the other block that I had made. I'm looking at it, make sure everything's parallel. The distance between this hex key thing and the side here is parallel. It tells me this should be going in pretty straight, and that pointing is fairly good direction. Yeah, that's pretty close. So once this is in, I'm gonna need a bigger hammer. There you go, comes on the other side. So now I gotta do this for all four. Must have bent this one at some point. I'll probably make a new one of these. There we go. So all four pieces in. Probably want to test the clearance with something. A piece of board. When this one is being used. Yeah. You can see, but each one has pretty good clearance of the other. It's particularly important in the middle too, because these two end ones are fairly easy to get clearance. So I think these angles are going to be good. So I forgot to put something behind it when I was punching these guys through, and you can see this one, it broke through the back. So what I recommend is just getting a piece of scrap wood that's fairly soft, and as you're punching these through, the outside, the edge here would be supported. So to determine how much I should leave down here on the fence, I got a piece of wood here that's 7/8 of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and use that as my gauge and put it at 2A, or I think is going to be ideally for this cutter there, and then put it ideally to this cutter. So now I have a set of lines that I can use. I use the French curve to try to find a pleasing line here, and as it turns out, it works well with about a 6-inch radius circle. So all of these fit inside or very close to the 6-inch radius circle. That was a happy little accident. Go ahead and mark that. I'm keeping the circular piece that I've cut off here because I'm going to use it to make an offset plate. The finish I'm using is very simple. It's just a couple layers of linseed oil, and then I sealed it up with some beeswax. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the project, and see you next time.